It's Wednesday. You all know what that means. It's time for another episode of the Life in the Movies podcast. I'm one of your co hosts. My name is Ryan Cam. Thank you all so much for tuning in. This week, Disney just celebrated 100 years, their 100-year anniversary. So, Disney's been in the news for all the wrong reasons. So, Jacob and I decided that we're going to talk about some good stuff from Disney, specifically our five favorite Disney movies that we consider underrated. It's going to be a lot of fun, and we will be talking about The Defenders episode 6. But first, I have to introduce my co-host, Jacob Martin. Jacob, how you doing?
I am doing well. It's been a great week. I just finished my third quarter of my first year at school, so I'm currently on a short break at the moment. That's really good. It's been really exciting. Disney turning 100. That's a really incredible accomplishment. Congrats. I will say, if you have not watched this short, Once Upon a Studio on Disney Plus, it is terrific. It could it might feel like a corporate sellout to some because it's all the animated Disney characters in one short, but it is a true labor of love. I love the blend of animation, and I'm not gonna lie, I got a little teary eyed by the end. It was a really well done short. I highly recommend it. It is probably ranks among the best shorts Disney has done. It is great.
Yeah, absolutely. And not many movie studios can say they've been around for 100 years. And Disney's been around for 100, and it's easy to dunk on them for many reasons. I mean, many justifiable reasons. But today, we're going to be a little positive this time around. But we're going to eschew going into what we've been watching lately because, well, a top five list from both of us is going to take a little bit of time. So we're just going to jump straight into the Defenders coverage. The Defenders episode 6 called Ashes, Ashes. Stick offers up a theory, Danny finds himself sidelined, and Alexandra learns that it is not easy being the leader. So let me spoil it for everybody. Alexandra dies in this episode. And basically, it's been taken over now by Elektra, who may or may not be aware that she is Elektra. I don't know. There's some weird developments in this one, but I'm still with the show, Jacob. I think I'm still liking it. What did you think?
Yeah, I like this episode as well. I I'm not gonna lie, I was shocked at the final twist there with Alexandra getting killed because I thought she was gonna be the mainline villain. But I actually did welcome it. I was invested in the whole dilemma of that episode with the hand being very divided with Alexandra's recent actions, such as resurrecting Erectra and making her the Black Sky. So I kind of like the whole concept that even something as villainous as the hand all have different motives and it's slowly tearing them apart from the inside. I thought that was a really intriguing development. Along with the whole thing with Iron Fist, there's a hidden power within him that everybody else in the Defenders is scared of, and they see that as kind of a threat. And I was kind of intrigued by where that was leading. I enjoyed the mission that Daredevil and Jessica Jones they went on like a side quest together. That was a lot of fun. They have great banter. I like the bit where they uh, talk to the teenage girl when they do a little bit of investigating, and I like the bit where Jessica brings up what happened to Matt's dad because she did a little dirt on him to help build her up. I thought that was a neat little touch. I also even Luke Cage and Iron Fist. They still have some fun camaraderie that makes this show a lot of fun. I wasn't expecting Stick to be killed off either in this episode. That kind of shocked me. Him trying to kill Iron Fist was a bit of a stretch. I was like, I don't know where we're going with this, but I still enjoyed the episode overall. A lot of great twists and turns, and I'm excited to see where the series is going to end up.
Yeah, I really did like Daredevil and Jessica Jones not becoming an item necessarily, but becoming like more friendly with each other because for like the first part of the show, they were kind of like not like at each other's throats, but kind of like jabbing at each other with the whole like scarf thing and that whole thing. But this, like when they were on screen together, I loved it. It was some of my favorite parts of this whole episode. The stick thing, I think my only problem with it is that it really did come out of nowhere. I mean, we have literally been informed as long as Jacob and I we have been covering these shows that Stick is kind of a prickly pear, but he is at least on the side of good, and his cause is at least noble. But all of a sudden, he's like, "Nah, I'm just going to kill the Iron Fist because desperate times call for desperate measures." I'm like, I would have appreciated a little more buildup on that because it just felt like, like, oh, Stick's going to kill someone now. It's like, huh? Like, what are we doing here? So I didn't hate it, but it was just, it was sudden. I guess that's my problem.
Yeah, it's like some of my problems with some of the Marvel MCU Disney Plus shows. Like there's good ideas in some of them, but with the short amount of episodes, they rush and skim through some things that feels like it came out of nowhere. So I feel like just in that one incident, I felt like you could have fleshed that out a little bit. Like, not that that was a bad idea per se, but it just was just very sudden.
Did you feel like Alexandra's death was a little bit sudden, or was that just me? Because I felt like I was kind of saying to myself, okay, she is not going to make it out of this show, but I figured it would be like the finale, not like episode 6, like 2 episodes beforehand. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just looking into nothing, but I don't know. It felt sudden.
Yeah, I can see that. I knew there was some distrust against Alexandra that we had seen throughout the episode. But like I said, it caught me off guard. It reminded me a little bit. I know, Ryan, you're going to disagree with me on this because I know you're not a fan of this movie, but it reminded me of in The Last Jedi when Kylo Ren killed Snoke. I did not see that coming when I saw that in theaters. And I actually welcome that because it shows that you have somebody trying to rise up and get the power for himself. And I don't know where they're going to go with Electra. It sounds like she's very conflicted on who she's serving. But if Electra is the big bad of the final 2 episodes and presumably Daredevil season 3, I haven't seen that, obviously. I actually kind of welcome that. I think that's going to be some interesting conflict.
Honestly, we could do an entire show on The Last Jedi. Actually, the movie turns 6 years old this year. Maybe
Ooh.
sometime in December we can watch Last Jedi because I have not seen it since the theaters. Maybe we can like watch it and then just do a whole Last Jedi episode where we discuss it because I know I am not a fan of it and you like it. So I feel like that would be interesting. Let's put a pin in that. But the Snoke reveal was honestly fine to me. I felt like I wasn't a huge into the character anyway, so what they did with him, I just didn't care. But again, let's put a pin in that. Let's save that for December. But yeah, I feel like the suddenness was there, but it didn't turn me off. I guess my only critique would be, I guess I wish they would have dropped a couple more breadcrumbs along the way, saying, "Hey, maybe, maybe not," or maybe I maybe it's just me, but overall, I'm still into the show. We're only 2 episodes left, and I can honestly say that I am looking forward to the conclusion because the conclusions to these shows have not always been solid, but I have hope that this will at least stick the landing.
Yeah, I have a feeling it will. I'm very optimistic about it. This show has been very consistent so far.
But I pass it off to all of you. What did you all think of The Defenders episode 6? Let us know in the comments. Love to read what you have to say. Well, Jacob, it's main event time. Let's celebrate a little Disney. Let's talk about our 5 Disney canon movies, like Disney animated canon movies that we feel are underrated. This is no Pixar. This is no live action. This is in the Disney canon. So we're talking Snow White to Strange World and everything in between. We're talking mainline Disney animated canon because honestly we could do 5 Pixar movies that we can do that are underrated. That's an entire list that I think we can do at a later date. but this is just mainline Disney. Was this do you feel like you had a list kind of prepared, Jacob, like in your head, or was this hard?
I mean, there are a lot of movies to choose from in the Disney animated canon. Of course, Wish hadn't come out yet, but as of now, there are 61 to choose from. We all know of like the bona fide Disney classics that are everybody's favorites, but I think thinking about this as we were planning this, I was able to come up with a top five in my head. Just some ones that I have a real fondness for, but are under the radar for some, and I wish they were more appreciated. And some of them I would rank up there with the all timers.
All right, well, why don't you start us off if you would like to? What is your number five?
My number five is a film that it came out just a few years before the Disney Renaissance. But yet, I think this is a terrific movie in its own right that does not get enough love, and that is The Great Mouse Detective from 1986. This film was Disney's follow up after one of their biggest bombs, The Black Cauldron, and the Disney Animation Studio was in a bit of uncertainty after that. But enter two filmmakers, Ron Clements and John Musker, who were given the task to direct this movie. This is a movie that the studio didn't really have much faith in. Jeffrey Katzenberg thought it was a silly idea. They actually slashed the budget in half on this movie because there was no faith in it. It was based on a series of children's books, and the children's book was called Basil of Baker Street, but Disney changed it to The Great Mouse Detective, which was a more generic title, which a lot of Disney animators were against, and they thought that was going to kill the movie. So there was a lot riding against this movie. The movie was mildly successful at the time. I think it competed against, I think it was The Land Before, no, not The Land Before Time, Don Bluth's other movie, American Tail, and it still was able to do okay considering American Tail was a bigger hit. The movie, it's a really brilliant film if you go back and look at it because it's pretty much Sherlock Holmes, but as a mouse. And I like that take on it where you get to see the mouse perspective of everything. I love the idea of Basil of Baker Street, and then you have Professor Radigan, voiced brilliantly by Vincent Price, in one of his best roles. And I'm not counting like his classic horror roles, but of all time, I love his role as Radigan and the constant back and forth between the hero and villain. There's just some fun, exciting set pieces. There's a really solid mystery in there. Great score by Henry Mancini, which is very underrated. And even some early use of CGI, which is done really well. There's a climax that's set within the clock tower of Big Ben. And considering it came out in 1986, the CGI used in that scene still looks very well. It is not dated in the movie in any way. And it's weird saying this, but considering we got the Flash, which came out this year, which had some very questionable CGI. It's crazy that a movie released in 1986 has better CGI than something like the Flash, which looked really wonky at times. But yeah, it's a good movie. I wish more people celebrated this one. I think it's a great Disney movie that definitely deserves a lot more attention.
Yeah, calling it wonky is rather generous, but yeah, I've actually never, or I actually have seen this, but it has been a very long time. I do remember liking it though. I'm a big fan of Vincent Price. I think that he is one of the great horror actors of all time, and just generally just a fantastic actor in general. So that is definitely due for a rewatch. But for my number five, I'm going with one of Disney's biggest risks and one of their biggest, most infamous stories. I'm going with The Black Cauldron. Now, The Black Cauldron is by far and away not a perfect movie. I am mature enough to recognize that. I choose it though because the ideas that it goes for or attempts to go for are honestly quite admirable. It's got a spirit that Disney kind of lacks recently. And when the topic of live action remakes comes about, Black Cauldron is near or at the top of my list because I think there is a lot there. And I feel like if they made a modern Black Cauldron, I think it'd be a little more successful. So I think its only biggest crime was that it was ahead of its time. Again, it's not a perfect movie, but I feel like it makes an attempt to try and do something different, whether it was just because they had to do something different or just because like other factors. But I feel like Black Cauldron gets kind of mistreated, sometimes for good reasons, other times for not so good reasons. So Black Cauldron is my number five.
Yeah, I can definitely kind of agree. I don't think this is a great movie by any means. It does have a lot of story problems, but this movie gets way too much hate. I like the fact that Disney was trying to do something different, the fact that they were trying to make a darker fantasy tale out of it. I don't think it fully worked, but I admire the execute or the attempt to do something. And like you said, Ryan, I definitely agree. A live action Black Cauldron is definitely a must. I'd rather see it than whatever the heck that new Snow White movie is going to be, which I think is going to be a big bust for the studio.
If it ever gets released at all at this point, if any of you have been paying attention to the news. But what is your number four?
My number four is a movie that came out when I was a kid. This was during that post Renaissance era where Disney was struggling again, trying to stay relevant, trying to compete with DreamWorks Animation. This is a movie that I honestly do not get the hate for. The last I checked, this movie currently has a 38% on Rotten Tomatoes, which shocked me when I first saw that. The movie is Brother Bear. I to this day I do not get why people don't like this movie. Uh, there are some weird tonal shifts in the movie, I guess, because it starts out very serious, where you have this guy named Kenai who goes on a path of revenge after one of his brothers is killed, and then he gets cursed and transformed into a bear, and then he transforms into a bear, and the movie gets a little bit goofy afterwards because you got like Rick Moranis voicing a moose, and you got a bear cub named Coda who can get a little on the annoying side. But to those who criticize that, I kind of get that, but I also say stick with it because the story itself is a very powerful tale of that of brotherhood, an unlikely brotherhood. A guy who is cursed into a bear who has a closer bond with this bear cub and this unlikely friendship that changes his life. And there's some very emotional moments in the movie that's a little bit on the dark side for Disney, but I think it pays off into a very powerful finish. Very emotional storytelling. I thought the culture explored, I thought was very fascinating, and the use of magic that's on display in the film. Some great songs from Phil Collins. Not as great as the songs in Tarzan, but there's still some really good gems in there, like "Tell everybody I'm on my way." The movie's been out for 20 years now, and the fact that I still sing along to it just shows how good of a song that it is. I don't understand why people don't like this one. I mean, it even has Walking Phoenix. Walking Phoenix is your main character, and he does a fantastic job as the main character of Kenai. That's it, and that's all, according to my friend Rashad.
That is actually on my list. It's a little further up, so punt it. I will come back to that. But for my number four, this is a movie that was post-Renaissance, so it was in that weird little era of like movies like Treasure Planet, where it was like Disney had definitely taken a step down, but I still love Treasure Planet with my whole heart, though it is not on this list because as far as I'm concerned, it is properly rated at this point in time. I'm going with Atlantis: The Lost Empire. This movie rocks. It is not, it definitely has some lumps. It is a little clumsy, but when it is on, man, is it on. I mean, the animation is still beautiful. You got Michael J. Fox as one of the voices, I believe. Jay, if you can help me out on this, I believe Leonard Nimoy is one of the voices here as well.
He is.
And he does a really good job as well. This is just, again, the same vein as Treasure Planet, kind of similar styles, but I hear no one talking about Atlantis, and that's another one where if they do live action, I feel like they can get away with it. I think Atlantis is nowhere near talked enough.
Yeah. If I had an honorable mention, Atlantis would be 6 or 7 on the list if we did a top 10. I do think it's an underrated gem.
Absolutely. Well, what is your number three?
Number 3 is this is actually in the Disney Renaissance era, and I would consider this the black sheep of the Disney Renaissance. It's a film that tends to get ignored. It was sandwiched in between two Disney classics that people still love to this day, The Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast, and it was also the studio's first sequel. And I'm talking about The Rescuers Down Under from 1990. The first Rescuers is not considered one of Disney's best films, but it was successful enough at the time to garner a sequel. I do like the original Rescuers. I don't have as much of a connection for it as I do Down Under, though, but the original Rescuers is still a good movie in its own right. Down Under has a special place in my heart because it was probably one of the first 2 or 3 Disney movies I remember seeing at such a young age. And even then, I remember being floored by it. I watched it long before I saw the first movie, but yet I always preferred Down Under over the first film. One, the animation is better, still high quality to the animation. This was the first animated Disney film to use the cap system, where they would use CGI to assist some of the more complex sequences to help assist the 2D animation. And maybe there's 1 or 2 CG shots that have aged the movie, but for the most part, it does pay off. And there are some beautiful flying sequences in this movie. Like, I still say this every time I talk about this movie. I don't think How to Train Your Dragon, the flying sequences in those movies would be possible without what Disney did in The Rescuers Down Under, particularly in the opening scene with the boy in the albatross. Like, there are some breathtaking shots in this movie that absolutely blows me away. I do love the Australian setting in the film. I like that this is more of an adventure film compared to the first one, which is more of a mystery. Bernard and Bianca, the rescuers, still have some fun banter in the film, and I like the addition of the Australian mouse Jake, who assists in the rescue. One of the more underrated Disney villains with the poacher McLeach, who was voiced by George C. Scott. Yes, you heard that right. The man who won an Oscar for playing Patton voiced a Disney villain at one point, and he is very sadistic in this movie, and he does a great job at that. I also love the addition of John Candy as the albatross Wilbur, who is a hilarious addition to the film. And overall, I dare say it's an awesome movie, better than the first in every way. Underrated score in Disney standards. Yeah, more people need to watch this one. It's terrific.
So I have not seen this movie cover to cover, but I have seen clips. I did know George C. Scott was in it, and he is, yeah, he understood the assignment. I mean, George C. Scott always understood the assignment, but he definitely understood the assignment this time around. The dude, like, no one must have told him that this was a Disney movie. It was like, Mr. Scott, you do know this is for children, right? And he must have been like, think I care? Like, he didn't care. But yeah, have not seen this movie cover to cover, but I agree with you. These flying sequences are so beautiful. The movie came out in, I got the site here,
1990.
1990, November of 90. Yeah, it really is crummy that it's literally sandwiched between The Little Mermaid, the movie that literally saved the studio, and Beauty and the Beast, the movie that literally created the best animated feature Oscar. So that's its only sin. Its only sin was that, well, it's timing, unfortunately. but it is definitely due. It's due for a full watch from me because I've seen the clips, but now I need to see the whole thing with the proper context. But as for my number three, I am going back to the final movie that, or actually the first movie that was produced while Walt Disney was no longer alive. We're talking about the original Jungle Book. I have a lot of nostalgia for the Jungle Book, and I watched it quite a bit because I was actually cast in the Jungle Book in a play of it. I was Baloo. It was a great time. So I watched this movie quite a bit, and it is so much fun. It's short. It I don't think it's even 90 minutes long. Let me check on that. But it's I remember the movie being so short because it is a very quick watch. But
I think it's like 75 minutes, if I'm not mistaken.
hang on, it's an hour and 18 minutes. So yeah, we were close. But yeah, it's got a great voice cast for the time. Phil Harris as Baloo, Sebastian Cabot as Bagheera. I mean, just really good voice cast. Like I said, the movie's just fun. It's like the songs are awesome. Like look for the bare necessities and the and ooby doo. I want to be like you, and I love that song too. And Christopher Walken butchered it, but that's another story for a whole another video. But but it's just a really good story with characters that are just really memorable. Like Shere Khan just scares me to death to this very day. So credit to him and Disney for just making him like a really threatening villain, and Kaa the snake and the elephants, which still make me laugh hilariously loud to this day. I feel like the Jungle Book needs to be celebrated a little more.
Yeah, no, the weird thing, I never considered the Jungle Book to be underrated because of because it is seen as a classic by many people. But I do agree it is a great movie. That was like the last big animated movie that Walt Disney worked on. The shame it came out after he died, but it's still a terrific movie. I agree with you on the songs and the characters. They're definitely the highlight of the film.
Yeah, 100%. But what is your number two?
My number two, it's a movie you casually referenced. It's part of the post Renaissance. I still think this film is underrated to a degree because it was an infamous flop at the time. And I think it's one I would rank this among Disney's best films. I would say probably in my top 20 from Disney Animation because it's a terrific film. And I'm going with Treasure Planet from 2002. This was my introduction to the Treasure Island story. Didn't know what Treasure Island was at the time. I just thought this was an original concept. But man, what a great way to be introduced to the Treasure Island story. And now that I'm familiar with the Treasure Island story, this is still my favorite iteration of it. Taking the classic template of Treasure Island and putting a sci fi spin on it was a touch of genius. Much like The Great Mouse Detective, this was directed by Ron Clements and John Musker, who have had a great career at Disney. These are the same guys who also directed The Little Mermaid, Aladdin, Hercules, The Princess and the Frog, and Moana, along with the other two movies that I think are more underrated compared to the other films they've directed. But I do love the idea they took with the sci-fi element. It's this very unique world where you have, you know, the old time look that of Treasure Island with the classic ships and everything. But you also give it this steampunk edge where like your pirate ships fly off into space and you have solar surfing. Like that was a brilliant concept that I loved. And even the tweaks they make in this, like turning Jim Hawkins into a troubled teen with daddy issues. To me, that made the story 10 times more compelling. And they make Long John Silver more so the father figure that Jim never had, who helped reshape his life. That was a brilliant touch that added 10 times more art to the story. And then you got the amazing song "I'm Still Here" by that guy from the Goo Goo Dolls, and that song is to me one.
John Rzeznik. That's
Thank
what
you.
it is.
Uh, my definitely, I would rank that as one of the best Disney songs ever written because of the emotion that it does bring to Jim's character. I love the animation. 2D and CG animation are blended seamlessly in the film. I think it's a brilliant movie. One of my absolute favorites. It was great as a kid. It still holds up all these years later, and it's such an underrated gem. I wish more people talked about this one more because it's as good as their best movies.
Yeah, whoever thought it was a good idea to put this up against Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, I hope you step on a Lego brick in the middle of the night. But yeah, Treasure Planet is just a fantastic movie. Like I said, I think that at this point it's properly rated. I see quite a few people talking about it and saying that like at the time it wasn't given the respect, but I feel like people are putting respect on its name, so at least time has been particularly kind to it. But yeah, I will be a Treasure Planet champion until the day I die. But for my number two, I'm going with a fairly recent one. It's going to be turning 10 years old next year, which, God, that makes me feel old. But I'm going with 2014's Big Hero 6. I feel like this movie came and went and feel like no one talks about it anymore. But man, this movie is a bit of a gut punch at times, especially with the main character, him losing his brother, and then basically turning Baymax, which, by the way, whoever created Baymax, I hope you got a hefty raise for it because you deserve it. But just turning Baymax into this crime fighter was, I thought, was just great. And there are several scenes in which this little boy just goes through so much, like with the processing the grief and the loss of his brother, like taking out all of Baymax's helping ones and putting in all the killer ones, and Baymax like kind of rejecting it, and then just that whole scene is just great. And then Baymax's death is just so brutal, where it like where he's about to go into the void. He's like, "Are you satisfied with your care?" And the boy doesn't want to let go. It's like, "Are you satisfied with your care?" And he's like, "Yes." And then Baymax just lets go. My heart's breaking just thinking about it. But it's got a great score. It's got a great story, beautiful animation. People forget this was a Marvel comic at one point, which I thought would have given it like more of sticking power, but I suppose not. But I love the rest of the cast too. I love San Francisco. That was a great idea. I love how a couple of the characters are named like Wasabi no Ginger and like after sushi. I think that's fun. So yeah, it's strange that Big Hero 6 isn't talked about a lot, but I think it should.
Uh, I, yeah, for me, like the Jungle Book, I feel like Big Hero 6 is properly rated. It was a film that a lot of people appreciated when it came out. And I do think there's still a lot of fans of that movie to this day. I haven't seen it in quite a few years. I've been kind of lukewarm on the film because I was a little bitter that it won Best Animated Feature at the Oscars that year over movies like the Lego Movie, which wasn't even nominated. But I still stand it's a good movie. Baymax was a brilliant touch. I think Baymax is the heart of the film, and it is fun to watch. I wouldn't consider it a personal favorite, but I still really like it.
Have a lollipop. Well, I love that scene when Baymax we introduce him for the first time and he just it's such a good scene where like the older brother like rips something off of like his younger brother's hand and Baymax just like fixes it. Like,
Yeah,
it's such a heartwarming scene.
I like the fist bump bit. But
That's so good. But what is your number one?
my number one, this movie is in my top five from Disney Animation. This movie, uh, for context, I recently was on Adam from What the Gems channel, and we did a ranking of all 10 movies in the Disney Renaissance era. And in the Disney Renaissance, I had this as my number three from that era, above movies like Aladdin, The Little Mermaid, and Mulan in context. This is a film that I think it was moderately successful, but it was a bit divisive at the time because it was seen as too dark. There's a little bit of appreciation for it nowadays, but it's still seen as inferior compared to some of the other films of this era. And I'm going with The Hunchback of Notre Dame as my pick for the most underrated Disney film.
Good
Even as
choice.
even as a kid, I love this movie. Some of the darker elements went over my head, but I still thought this was a great movie. I found a lot of resonance in the Quasimodo character, and I thought the film was an epic watch. Now that I've seen the movie as an adult, I love the movie even more. The fact that this movie is rated G and Disney was able to get away with some really dark stuff, especially with the villainous character Frollo, who has a god complex. He lusts after Esmeralda, a gypsy that he also has deeply prejudiced against, is very messed up. And, he sings the song Hellfire where he sings about killing her, but he sings about wanting to sleep with her at the same time, all in the name of God, which is really messed up. And even like the imagery of like this seductive version of her dancing through flames, like this would not be a G-rated movie today, especially considering how many animated movies get the PG rating just for P jokes. But I think this is still a terrific film. I love the fact that Disney was able to take a lot of narrative risks. Obviously, they couldn't do a faithful adaptation of the original book, which I know is a lot darker. But the fact that they were still able to retain the themes of it and still make a great family film out of it that anyone can still watch has to be greatly commended. I would say outside of his work with Howard Ashman, this is some of Alan Menken's best work as a composer. I love the songs with Steven Schwartz, songs like Hellfire, God Help the Outcasts, Topsy Turvy, The Bells of Notre Dame, and Menken's score is absolutely phenomenal. The Quasimodo character is one of the most relatable characters because he has he doesn't see himself in a positive light because of the abuse he's had over the years, and he's just looking for acceptance from others. And I love the arc that he goes through. This movie has uh, just a great epic scope to it with its animation, and all around, this is a movie that I love. Like every single minute of this movie, it's on par. Like I said, it's one of the best films in the Renaissance because there's just so much care put into the story. I think the themes in this movie hit so hard, and it's one of my personal favorites from Disney animation that I think deserves a lot more love than what it currently has.
Yeah, man, Hunchback is quality. It really is. And it has aged tremendously well. When I was in Utah visiting Rachel from Rachel's Reviews, we actually saw a performance of Hunchback of Notre Dame, and it was really good. So yeah, I have nothing but love and respect for Hunchback of Notre Dame. That movie really is quality. Shout out to Tom Hulce, who was Mozart in Amadeus. He voiced his Quasimodo in that movie, and he was awesome. But
Yeah, I would also say shout out to Tony J as Frollo, who I would put, he's probably my second favorite Disney villain behind Scar in
Yeah,
context.
that's yeah, shout out to Tony J as well. He did a great job. But for my
Oh,
number one, it was the punt from earlier. It is Brother Bear. I have been a Brother Bear defender for many a year now. And like I said, speaking of Rachel, she does not care for the movie. She doesn't dislike it. She just doesn't particularly care for it. I've been one of those that has actually defended the movie on more than one occasion. Pretty much what you were talking about, Jacob. It's got a great story, beautiful animation. Joaquin Phoenix voices a bear in this movie. Like, how is this movie not talked about more? I mean, we talk about his turn as Joker and Her and all these other movies, but he voices a bear. Silence, like just complete silence. But it's like I said, beautiful story about brotherhood. Phil Collins, not as good as Tarzan, but definitely still Phil Collins, like understanding the assignment, like tell everybody I'm on my way, among other songs. It's still just a great score and just the heartbreaking revelation of what happens, yeah, it crushed me as a kid. Like I saw this, dang, how old was I when I saw this? But I was a kid. And even then I understood, oh, and so it's like at a certain point, these two are going to have a difficult conversation, and that conversation comes, and you're not ready for it because it's not great. But yeah, Brother Bear, pretty much everything you said. It's a movie that does not get the appreciation that it deserves. It's really good.
Yeah, it is a really good movie. I will say in context, there were three animated movies that were close to making the top five. So if I had any honorable mentions, Atlantis: The Lost Empire, and then I would also say The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad and The Fox and the Hound were close to making my top five. But it was a hard list.
Yeah, Ichabod and Mr. Toad is a really good movie. I actually watched it a couple months ago, about a month and a half ago. Like the stuff with the headless horseman, my God, I would love to have been in a theater when that happened, just people freaking out. And and like I said, Atlantis is on my list. Which other one did you mention, Jacob? I forget.
The Fox and the Hound
The
was
Fox and the
close.
Hound. Yeah, that movie is pretty heartbreaking as well.
All right. Do you have any honorable mentions before we wrap up?
Actually, let me check because I think I do. Da, 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 da. Oh, yes, I do. I haven't seen it for a while, but I remember really enjoying the many adventures of Winnie the Pooh, as well as the Winnie the Pooh movie we got in 2011. Again, from probably the same person who did the whole thing with Treasure Planet. Some genius thought it was a good idea to put it with Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2. What were they thinking?
Yeah,
But
that was pretty dumb. But
but I
I
do
do like both of the Winnie the Pooh movies.
Yeah, and I know I shouldn't. I'm a 26-year-old man, but I do enjoy both the Winnie the Pooh movies. I think they're cute, and for what they're aiming for, I think it more than succeeds. And
Yeah. No
another choice,
shame, Ryan. No shame.
and one more choice is the original Wreck-It Ralph. The sequel is just kind of there, but I think the original Wreck-It Ralph does the whole villain is now a hero thing about as good as you could ever ask.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Wreck-It Ralph is pretty good. I actually enjoy that one over Megamind and Despicable Me combined.
That is for sure. But I pass it off to all of you. What are some Disney movies that you find underrated? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to read what you have to say. And Jacob, this is a privilege to do this with you every week. And before we do leave, I want to get one bit of house cleaning out of the way. This coming Wednesday, well, actually, today when this drops, it'll be dropping around noon to 1-ish. So at 9 o'clock Eastern, I will be on Jacob's channel for the latest in discussing DreamWorks. We'll be talking about the very, very surreal B movie. Oh boy, that's going to be a very interesting discussion, I can already tell. But I am greatly looking forward to it, Jacob. Like I said, it's a privilege to do this with you every week. Tell the people where they can find you.
They can find me on Twitter, Letterboxd, Facebook. You can also subscribe to my channel. Like Ryan said, when this drops today at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, we'll be talking about B Movie on the Discussing DreamWorks podcast. That is going to be a really, really fun discussion, depending on how we think of the movie, because it's definitely one of their strangest movies, that's for sure. But yeah, that's the big thing I got on the channel this week. And there might be some other additional videos that will drop from my what carryovers from my what I've watched live streams and some of the reviews that will drop there. But if you want to subscribe to my channel, feel free to do that. And if you love DreamWorks, definitely check out the live stream later today.
Yeah, Jacob's channel is linked in the description. Go give him a subscribe there. If not, see this handsome face on Jacob's channel talking about Jerry Seinfeld as B. So yeah, that is assuredly a thing, and flowers die, and that's just the tip of the iceberg, y'all. But that's at 9 o'clock Eastern tonight. But as for this channel, Scary Mania is ongoing. I appreciate all the support. Like I said, I don't pay super close attention to views. I mean, I do look at it, but I'm not obsessed over it. But I can definitively say that this Scary Mania has been one of the better viewed, and I am very proud of what I've been doing on the channel, so I appreciate all of the support. Jacob Martin will be a part of it in the upcoming slate if the video is not dropped yet. He and I will be talking about Videodrome from David Cronenberg, and Jacob Collins from 3D Movie Cinema will be joining me to talk about Hellraiser, and Matt Wyatt will be joining me to talk Faculty. So I got collabs coming, collabs for days, but that's coming up. Life in the Movies every Wednesday, Small Talk every Tuesday, the Smallville Rewatch podcast. So yeah, a lot of stuff coming to the channel. Plus Scorsese month, plus Chris Mania, a lot to look forward to. So if you have not subscribed, please do. Click the bell. You know what to do. For Jacob Martin, my name is Ryan Cam. We will see you all in the next one. Take care.